Section 1. Hello, everyone. Tonight we are going to follow the quiet steps of a wandering monk through the soft underbrush of an ancient forest, where fireflies blink like little lanterns and the earth smells like moss and memory. You'll meet someone unexpected, someone who lives by taking, but might just give you something more lasting than gold. As you listen, you'll drift away into that perfect in-between place where stories become dreams and dreams carry you far from your worries. There's no rush, no loud thoughts here, just the gentle rhythm of a world winding down. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. Part 1. You trudged along the path as twilight brushed against the tops of the trees. The sandals on your feet were worn thin, soles flapping faintly like whispering leaves. You didn't mind. Pain in the body was often a gift. It reminded you that you were alive, awake, and still capable of walking forward. The forest was your companion now. Tall, leaning trees, their bark gnarled and soft with moss, lined either side of the dirt trail like old monks watching in silence. Birds had already gone to sleep, but the crickets had taken over, 1,000 tiny musicians fiddling beneath the roots. You were alone, as you often were, and you liked it that way. Alone meant quiet. And quiet was your vow. For 7 years, you hadn't spoken. You had given up all speech, all worldly comfort, and all names. Yes, even your own. The monastery had trained you to be like still water, deep, undisturbed, and always reflective. It worked, most days. You reached a stream, its surface rippling like silk pulled between stones. You crouched, washed your face, then stripped off your robe to bathe. The water was icy, and you gasped inwardly, but you didn't complain. Monks don't complain. They merely accept. You placed your satchel, a simple thing made of canvas and twine, on a flat rock by the edge. Inside was everything you owned, a cup, your prayer beads, and a half loaf of millet bread. And when you looked up, it was gone. At first, you thought the wind had tossed it into the undergrowth. But then you saw footprints, barefoot, slightly crooked, and movement between the trees. A figure, half shadowed and half laughing. Someone had taken it. You didn't shout, couldn't, but you did what any monk would do. You followed. It wasn't hard. The thief hadn't tried very hard to cover their tracks. Ferns were trampled, branches broken, and your quiet feet stepped over them like ripples over sand. After 20 minutes, the scent of firewood tickled your nose. You crouched behind a tree and watched. A small fire danced inside a thicket, surrounded by stones. Beside it sat a man. No, a boy really, no older than 20. His skin was sunburnt, and his clothes were patched in every color of the forest. Your satchel was beside him, casually opened, as if it had always belonged there. He was roasting something over the fire, something brown, sizzling faintly. He must have heard your steps because he turned, saw you, and smiled. You lost something, he said. You stepped forward, unsure what to do. You pointed to the satchel. Your eyes said, "That's mine." You hoped he could read. He didn't flinch. In fact, he patted the ground beside him. "Come sit," he said. "You hungry?" You raised an eyebrow. The audacity of it. First, he steals from you. Then, he offers you dinner. Still, the fire looked warm, and the food, if not sacred, was certainly hot. You hesitated, but your stomach made the decision for you, loudly. It growled so forcefully it startled a nearby squirrel off its branch. He chuckled, "Guess that's a yes." You sat, your robes damp and sticking to your back, your silence wrapping around you like another layer of cloth. The boy handed you a piece of roasted yam. You sniffed it. Nothing smelled of poison, unless he was trying some sort of stealthy gluten revenge. He must have caught your suspicion because he took a bite of his own. See? No tricks. No sleepy herbs, just dinner. You nodded and ate slowly. The yam was sweet, a little burnt on the outside. Charcoal crunched between your teeth, but your hunger didn't care. Neither did your dignity. You had walked all day on an empty stomach, and the forest doesn't exactly run food delivery. "So," the boy said, licking his fingers, "you don't talk? Or are you just shy?" You gestured a single palm down. "No." He tilted his head. "Ah, one of those monks. I met a guy once who lived in a bell tower and wouldn't even look at girls. Said eye contact was a sin. What about sneezing? Can monks sneeze or is that too worldly?" You raised an eyebrow again, this time amused. He laughed. You do have a sense of humor. That's something. He leaned back on one elbow and looked up at the stars just starting to peek through. Name's Lao. You didn't answer. You had no name to give. That's cool, Lao said. I'll call you Monk. You sighed inwardly. So much for mystery. The fire popped. A log shifted, sending sparks swirling like tiny fireflies. Lao reached into your satchel, not to steal again, but to hand you the prayer beads. Figured these were yours. Didn't want to mess with them. Bad luck, right? You nodded once. He understood more than you expected. The night was settling around the clearing now, thick and velvety. Owls hooted in the distance. You felt your muscles relax, though your mind still ticked with unease. Who was this boy? Why was he so casual, so generous after taking from you? Still, you stayed, because something about him made you curious. And to be honest, it was warmer here than sleeping alone under a wet tree. Monk, Lao said, yawning. Tomorrow, I'll give you your bread back. I just really wanted to try millet again. Haven't had it since my mom passed. It was her favorite. He curled up on a cloth sack and closed his eyes. The fire whispered low now, nothing left to burn but embers and the last edges of the day. You sat beside the flames, your hands warming near the heat. And for the first time in many months, you weren't just thinking about enlightenment. You were wondering what kind of person laughs while stealing and shares his last yam, and whether or not you were supposed to dislike him. Next morning, you're woken not by a bell or bird call, but by the faint sizzle of something in a clay pan, and the scent of garlic. It's not enlightenment, but your stomach votes yes. You sit up slowly, brushing stray leaves from your robe, your back sore from sleeping on cold, uneven ground. In the clearing, Lao is crouched over the fire again. This time he's using a stick like a spatula, poking at what might be mushrooms or tiny, overly optimistic pancakes. Morning, Monk, he says without looking up. You snore like a goat choking on incense. You shoot him a look. He grins. Okay, more like a meditating goat, peaceful, with nasal congestion. You rise, stretch in silence. The clearing feels different in daylight, less mysterious, more cluttered. There are tins stacked behind the thicket wall, a threadbare blanket drying on a branch, and a tiny ceramic elephant half buried in the dirt. The satchel is still there, now zipped neatly shut. You check, it's all inside. Even the millet bread, slightly nibbled on one side, like he made a deal with a squirrel halfway through. Had a weird dream, Lao says. You were floating above a temple, tossing rice like flower petals. I think you were laughing. He pauses. First monk I ever dreamed laughing. You sit near the fire and accept the half-burned mushroom he offers on a flat leaf. It tastes earthy, a little bitter. You try not to wince. Lao eats his without complaint, chewing thoughtfully. Listen, he says after a while, I want to explain about the satchel. It wasn't personal. Just saw it sitting there and figured, hey, nobody watching. Didn't think you'd chase me like a jungle ghost. You raise an eyebrow. Obviously, you haven't met monks. Lao shrugs. Guess I haven't met many of your type who don't immediately call me sinner or start muttering prayers like I'm a ghost that needs banishing. You shake your head slowly, pointing to your lips. Vow. He nods, thoughtful. Must be hard. Never saying anything. What if you stub your toe real bad? You grin despite yourself. Then he leans back on his elbows again. You know, I used to want to be a monk. When I was a kid, thought it meant you got free rice and never had to cut your hair. You blink. That's not entirely inaccurate. But then my brother said monks can't eat mango with chili salt or marry someone cute, so I gave up. You mime a dramatic gasp. He laughs. I know, right? Tragedy. My mango addiction ruined my spiritual career. The two of you sit in companionable silence for a while. The air smells of dew and smoke, and bees hum lazily through the tall grass. A spider climbs your sleeve, and you flick it off without squishing it. Peaceful violence. Lao throws a twig at a bird pecking near the rice sack. You staying around here long? He asks. You shrug. You hadn't planned it. The forest path had no end point, just the direction your feet wanted to go. Well, he says, stretching, you might as well stick with me for a bit, unless you've got a holy appointment to attend. You gesture toward the trees. Wandering. He nods. Me too, kind of, wandering between regrets and half-decent mushroom patches. You raise an eyebrow. He looks down at the fire, then pokes it with a stick. I used to have a village, real one. Mud walls, squeaky carts, gossip louder than drums. I even had a real name, back when names still meant something. You wait. He's not telling you this for no reason. I started stealing because it was easy, he says. Then I kept doing it because it became necessary. He scratches his head. My grandmother, she's sick, real sick. The kind of sick you can't fix with boiled ginger. She needed medicine and no one in the village would help us. Said it was karma for my dad running off. So I ran too, into the forest, started taking from travelers. Not much, just food, clothes, coins, never anything sacred. He points at your prayer beads. Not stupid. You look at him. Long. There's a weight behind his smile now. It never left, but now you see the structure underneath it. Like looking at a cracked statue and realizing the damage makes it beautiful. He sighs. I know, doesn't excuse anything. I don't know. You're the first person I've shared food with in months. You reach into your satchel and pull out the remaining millet bread. You break it in half and offer the bigger piece to him. He hesitates. Then he takes it. Okay, he says, a bit more quietly. I was wrong. You're not just a goat with discipline. You laugh silently, head tilted back. Then the clouds move across the sun and the light turns soft. He looks up. There's a hut a few hours east, he says. Old one. Mine, technically. You can crash there tonight if you want. Has a roof made of rice sacks. Very trendy. You give a short nod. Not because you need shelter, but because you're curious where this will go. And because, for the first time in a long while, you're not walking alone. Waiting for continue. The path east winds like a sleepy river, sometimes vanishing altogether beneath roots and fallen leaves. You follow Lao through thickets of wild ginger and bamboo, so tall they creak like doors in the wind. He walks barefoot, confidently, as if the land itself recognizes him. You, on the other hand, keep stepping on things that crunch or squish unpleasantly. You move like someone trying not to wake the trees, Lao teases over his shoulder. You grunt softly through your nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. The clouds gather around noon, fat and slow, like they've got nowhere to be. And soon enough, a drizzle begins. Light at first, like the forest is whispering secrets, then heavier, like it's trying to apologize. We're close, Lao says, pointing ahead, just through that patch of elephant grass, unless the termites took it again. The hut is smaller than you expected, made of woven cane, palm thatch, and yes, rice sacks. They're patched together with fishing line and sheer optimism. A rusted tin kettle dangles from a bent nail at the door. It looks like a strong wind could send the whole place flying. Still, it's dry, and as you step inside, you're hit with the smell of earth, herbs, and old wood smoke. It's comforting in a weird forest hermit sort of way. Lao tosses a bundle of firewood into the corner. I built this when I was 12. Took me all summer and a hammer made from a rock. Honestly, the termites probably deserve it more than I do. You crouch by the little fire pit inside and help him arrange kindling. The roof leaks in only 2 places. A win. Outside, the rain picks up. Big drops now, beating down like the sky is doing laundry. Lao hangs a ragged cloth curtain at the door, then sets a pot to boil with some forest herbs and what might be a potato if you squint. Can't promise flavor, he says, but I can promise it's hot. He's right. The broth is watery, with a faint taste of moss and mystery root. Still, it's warm, and it fills your stomach. You sit across from each other, knees almost touching, the fire crackling quietly between you. The curtain flaps in the wind like it's trying to escape the conversation. I had a friend once, Lao says after a long pause. Before the stealing, before the monastery bell tower dreams. We used to play a game, pretend we were kings, built thrones from broken chairs, wore crowns made of spoons. He always let me win, even when I was a jerk. You glance up. One day, he didn't come back from the rice paddies. Snakebite. Lao shrugs, eyes far away. After that, I stopped pretending to be a king, started acting like I didn't care. The rain clatters louder now, filling the small space with its steady rhythm. I guess it's weird, he says, telling you all this. Someone who doesn't even speak. You smile, just a little. Then, without thinking, you tap your chest twice. Thank you. Lao catches the gesture. You're welcome. Lightning flashes somewhere behind the hills, followed by a soft rumble of thunder. You shift slightly, adjusting your robe. The fire flickers and pops. A silence settles, not awkward, but dense, like the kind of silence that grows when 2 people are thinking the same thing, but neither wants to say it out loud. You know, Lao says finally, voice lower now, if I hadn't stolen from you, I'd probably still be cold and hungry tonight. You raise your brows? You mean the other way around. He chuckles. True, I've never met a monk who'd share a soggy yam with the guy who robbed him. That's a new one. Outside, the wind changes direction. The curtain lifts slightly, letting in a gust of damp, green-scented air. You close your eyes, letting it touch your face. Lao lies back on a rolled-up mat, folding his arms behind his head. Weird, huh? How sometimes the dumbest decisions lead to the best accidents. You nod. You're not sure if this counts as an accident or a parable. Either way, you're oddly content. The hours pass slowly, the rain unrelenting. You nap in shifts, curled on the bamboo slats of the floor. At one point, a gecko lands on your sleeve, eyes bulging like it's seen things. You gently shoo it toward the door. Lao watches and smirks. I should name him, he says. Maybe Bliss. He looks like he's never paid rent in his life. You can't help but let a small puff of laughter escape your nose. Later, Lao tosses you a dry cloth. You looked cold, he says. The words are simple, but they hit like prayer bells in a canyon. You hold the cloth close, not just for the warmth. There's something more in that gesture, something rare. Kindness without obligation. You wonder briefly what your master would say if he saw you here. Sitting in a thief's hut, eating stolen mushrooms, laughing at lizards named Bliss. Probably frown, maybe nod, or just quietly update your karmic scorecard. By nightfall, the rain softens again. Outside, frogs begin their chorus. You and Lao sit side by side in the doorway, feet dangling, sharing the last of the potato stew straight from the pot. You've spent many nights in silence, but tonight, silence feels full, like a bowl that isn't empty, but waiting. And maybe you think as the stars blink into view, kindness doesn't always come from the purest hands. Sometimes it arrives in a rice sack hut, wearing a patchwork shirt, with muddy toes and a grin like mischief carved into sunlight. Waiting for. You wake to birdsong and the faint smell of damp earth warming under early sun. For a moment, you're not sure where you are. The bamboo roof, the rice sacks, the snoring. Ah! Right, the hut. Lao. He's sprawled out on the floor like a cat that lost a fight with a hammock. One foot still twitching, possibly mid-dream. You hear him mumble something about mangoes and betrayal. You ease up slowly and stretch your arms, bones cracking like dry twigs. Morning light spills in through the gaps in the woven walls, turning everything golden and soft. It's the kind of peace you don't expect from a place built by a child with a rock hammer. You slip outside, barefoot, letting the grass press cool patterns into your soles. The storm has left behind a sparkling trail. Leaves gleam like they've been lacquered, and puddles reflect the sky like little fallen mirrors. At a small stream nearby, you cup water into your hands and rinse your face. The shock of cold wakes you fully, but gently. You take a deep breath. The air smells like possibility. Behind you, you hear a familiar voice yawn. You disappear like that again, monk. I'll assume you've ascended. You glance back. Lao stands at the edge of the hut, shirtless, scratching his head, looking like a disgraced jungle prince. I had a dream, he says, walking over. You were flying again. This time, you were riding a rooster. You raise an eyebrow. It was a really majestic rooster, he adds defensively. Scarlet feathers, regal posture, like a feathery horse. You smirk. The two of you walk further downstream, Lao carrying a tin bowl and a short stick he calls a fish persuader. The stick persuades nothing, but it does scare frogs into leaping dramatically. You don't catch fish, but you do gather a handful of leafy greens Lao insists are forest spinach, and not instant stomach regret. Back at the hut, you help prepare breakfast. Boiled greens, leftover broth, and a handful of rice you almost forgot you had. This is actually decent, Lao says between bites. If I had a second bowl, I'd open a restaurant. Thief and Monk Cafe, meals of mystery. You make a face like you're deeply unsure about the health rating. He grins. All right, 3 stars at best. After breakfast, Lao pulls out a small, hand-carved wooden box from under a plank. He opens it carefully. Inside are a few worn things, a folded cloth with intricate embroidery, a bit of twine wrapped around tiny silver bells, and a faded paper drawing of a woman with gentle eyes. My grandmother, he says, barely above a whisper. Back when she still remembered who I was. You sit beside him and look without speaking. She used to tell me stories at night, he goes on, about mountain spirits, fox brides, and clever turtles. Said stories were how we remember the things we can't keep. He touches the cloth. This was hers, from when she danced in the temple festivals, before her knees went traitor. You nod, understanding not from knowledge, but from the shared ache behind his words. Sometimes even silence knows how to say me too. Can I ask you something? He says, eyes still on the box. Why do monks take vows like that? Silence, fasting, no attachment. Why say no to everything? You think for a moment. Then you trace the outline of a circle in the air, then a dot in the center. A still point, he says, watching. So all the noise outside doesn't pull you under? You smile. I get that, he says softly. But it must be lonely, all that stillness. You gesture between the two of you. Not always. Lao looks at you, and for a moment he says nothing. Then, fair. Though I doubt many monks share huts with criminals. You raise one hand, wiggling it side to side. Debatable. He laughs. You got a rebellious streak. I knew it. Later, he disappears for a bit and comes back holding a string of oddly shaped fruits. Want to help me sell some of these in the next village? He asks. I promise not to steal anything. At least, not if they're watching. You pause, then nod. It's not part of your original path, but your feet don't seem to mind. The journey to the village takes most of the afternoon. The road is more suggestion than structure, just a dirt trail tangled with roots, cutting through banana groves and sun-dappled trees. You carry the fruit. Lao carries the banter. I'll do the talking, he says. You just look mysterious and holy. Maybe levitate a little. You give him a flat look. Fine, just stand there like enlightenment wrapped in fabric. The village isn't large, maybe 20 homes clustered around a dusty square with a well in the center, and 2 chickens who clearly run things. Children race barefoot across the path, shrieking with laughter, while elders lounge under a banyan tree, playing some game with pebbles and muttered curses. Lao approaches a stall, chats with a vendor, and exchanges the fruit for a few coins and a pouch of dried lentils. You watch him, the way his body moves, relaxed but alert, every gesture halfway between charm and apology. One of the children tugs at your robe. Are you a real monk? She asks, wide-eyed. You smile and bow your head. Can you do magic? You press a finger to your lips and wink. She giggles and runs off. Later, as the sun begins to lower behind the trees, you and Lao sit on the edge of the square, feet dusted red from the road. He tosses a pebble at the chicken and misses. We made it through a whole visit without theft, he says. Call the historians. You nod. A small victory. Maybe I'm not hopeless, he adds. You nudge him lightly. Maybe not at all. As you walk back to the hut, dusk wrapping the world in lavender and silver, he suddenly stops and says, Hey. You turn. Thanks, he says, for letting me be more than who I was. The wind picks up. You don't answer out loud. You don't have to. The path is quiet except for your footsteps, side by side, echoing gently into the night. Waiting for Tinyu. The next few days pass in a rhythm so gentle it could rock the moon to sleep. You wake with the birds, rinse your face in the cold stream, and gather greens while Lao plays shepherd to a band of highly undisciplined frogs. Meals are simple, whatever you can find or trade for. One night, it's wild mushrooms and lentils. Another, grilled banana stems that taste vaguely like roasted hope. Lao talks almost constantly, though never annoyingly so. He tells you stories from his childhood, from the dreams he had, and some that maybe happened only in dreams. Did I tell you about the time I tried to trap a ghost in a clay pot? He asks one night, poking at the fire with a charred stick. You shake your head. I was 11. Thought the ghost was haunting my grandmother's house. Turns out it was just my cousin snoring through his nose like a broken flute. You let out a soft wheeze of laughter, and he beams like he's won a prize. These are slow, unremarkable days, and yet they're everything. One morning you wake before the light comes and step outside. The sky is still navy blue, and the forest hums in that half-awake way, like it's stretching. You sit on a rock and begin your meditation, breathing in the dew-sweet air, listening to the world be exactly what it is. Behind you, you hear Lao stirring. He doesn't interrupt. He's learned your rhythms now. Sometimes you sit for an hour, sometimes only a few minutes. When you return to the hut, he hands you a bowl of something that might be porridge or might be an attempt to redefine the limits of texture. Eat it fast, he says, before it reconsiders being edible. Later that afternoon, as you sit weaving thin strips of bark into mats, Lao glances over. Can I ask something personal? He says. You nod. You ever think about going back to wherever your monastery was? Or have they already replaced you with a more talkative model? You pause. Then trace 2 circles in the air, one large, one small, and motion between them like a tide. A cycle? He says. Like you'll return when it brings you back? You tap your nose. He leans back against a tree. I like that. Feels less like running and more like flowing. The wind rustles the leaves above. A few fall, twisting in slow spirals like they're dancing down to join the earth. Lao turns his head toward you. You know, I used to think monks were just walls. Quiet, unreadable walls in robes. You raise a brow. But you're not, he continues. You're like one of those wells, deep and still, but if you drop a pebble, something echoes back. It's one of the kindest things anyone has ever said to you. That night, as you both lie under the stars, too warm to stay inside the hut, he turns and says, I've been thinking about what you said, or gestured rather, about cycles, about still points. You keep your eyes on the stars, listening. I think I've been spinning my whole life, like a wheel that doesn't know where the road is. You nod? But lately, he adds, softer now, it's felt like I've been slowing down. Not stopping, just noticing. A pause. The fire crackles. I like noticing. The forest sings its nighttime lullaby, crickets, owls, the occasional snort of something uncertain in the bushes. And through it all, the 2 of you lie there in the dark, quiet not because you must be, but because you want to be. The next morning, Lao does something strange. He kneels. Not a joke, not a performance. He kneels before you, head bowed. I've been a thief, he says, voice trembling. A liar, a fool. But if there's something I can learn, something better I could become, will you teach me? The words hang heavy in the air. You place a hand on his shoulder. Yes, you sign with your other hand. But then you gesture for him to rise. You are not above him. This is not a throne. This is a shared path. Lao stands. His eyes are wet, but he's smiling. From that moment, the days shift. He begins to ask about meditation, about focus, about breathing through impulse and listening with the whole body. You teach him, not as a master, but as a friend. He struggles at first, falls asleep mid-breath, sneezes into a beetle. Once, while attempting to meditate through hunger, he breaks and yells at a mango for mocking him. Still, he shows up every morning, and every night, he reflects. I was tempted to pocket that fruit today, he admits one evening, but I didn't. I told the vendor it looked nice and walked away. My stomach's furious, but hey, tiny victories. You nod proudly. Tiny victories are still victories. One afternoon, you watch as he repairs a broken bird nest he found on the trail. Not because anyone asked, just because it was broken. It's weird, he says, placing it gently back in the crook of a tree. I don't even know if the bird will return, but it felt right. You press your palms together in silent applause. He grins. You're rubbing off on me, monk. Maybe so. Maybe something about your shared silence, shared soup, shared sleep beneath mosquito-thick skies. Maybe that is the real vow being lived here. And maybe kindness is less about never stealing and more about learning to give back more than you ever took. Waiting for continue. It starts with a knock, not the polite kind. The kind that rattles the bamboo frame of the hut, makes birds scatter from the trees, and sends Lao stumbling over a cooking pot as he scrambles to his feet. You sit up slowly, already aware something has shifted. The air is too still. The wind has stopped its humming. Even the frogs have paused their endless declarations of existence. Lao peeks out through a gap in the wall, then stiffens. Uh-oh. You raise an eyebrow. Elaborate. There's a man outside. Well, 3 men. And they look like they want to tax my kneecaps. You step out before he can stop you. Standing just beyond the clearing are 3 figures in travel-worn clothes, dust clinging to every fold. The tallest one steps forward. He has a jaw like it was carved for headbutts. Lao, he says. No anger, no affection, just identification. Hello, Min, Lao replies, as if greeting a childhood toothache. You've been hard to find, Min continues, voice as dry as day-old bread. We've been looking. I've been here, Lao says, gesturing vaguely around, practicing honesty and abstinence, not from food. That would be madness. Min doesn't laugh. He's not here for comedy. He looks at you. And you are? You bow, calm. Just a monk. Well, Min says, your friend owes us more than rice prayers. He ran off with silver that wasn't his. Lao winces. Technically, it was silver. The not his part is, Well, negotiable. Min steps closer. You think you can hide behind a monk's robe and walk away from what you did? You hold your hand up, asking them to wait. Then, turning to Lao, you gesture, "Is this true?" He nods, sheepishly. "It was a long time ago. I was hungry, desperate, stupid." You consider this. Then you turn to Min again and motion for a moment of peace. He scowls. "He owes us." "How much?" You sign. Min doesn't understand. Lao translates. "He's asking how much I owe." Min smirks. 5 silver marks, plus interest." Lao does quick mental math. "That's a goat, 3 chickens, and a cartwheel's worth." You raise a finger. "Give me 1 week." Min blinks. "What?" Lao groans. "Monk, are you negotiating on my behalf? Bold move. 1 week," you repeat through gesture. "To repay." Min stares at you, then surprisingly nods. 1 week, or I take something else." He glances at Lao, then at your hut. "Maybe both." With that, the 3 men turn and disappear into the forest. Lao exhales like he's been holding his lungs hostage. "Well, that was invigorating. I'm going to go lie down and scream into a blanket." Instead, you tug his sleeve and sit him down. "We will fix this," you gesture. "Together." He looks at you. "Even after I lied to you? After I dragged you into this?" You shake your head. "We walk forward, not backward." So the plan begins. Lao returns to the village. You follow. He speaks to a baker, to a spice seller, to a carpenter who once caught him stealing nails. "I'm trying to repay a debt," he says, voice steady. "I'll work. I'll carry. I'll clean whatever needs cleaning." Some say no. Some say maybe. One old woman hands him a broom and says, "Start there, boy. The wind's been lazy." Lao sweeps. You help repair a fence. Together, you cut wood, bundle reeds, lift, haul, hammer, scrape, gather, and deliver. At night, your bodies ache. But Lao's smile returns. He counts the coins at the end of each day, lining them up on a flat stone. "Almost halfway," he says after 3 days. "Maybe this monk plan of yours wasn't so bad." You nudge him playfully. On the 5th day, a boy runs up to you, eyes wide. "The river's rising," he yells. "It's flooded the south fields." You rush with Lao to the edge of the village. Sure enough, the muddy river has burst through its banks, soaking everything in its path. A farmer shouts, "The water's reached the lower storerooms." Without thinking, you and Lao wade into the flood. Together, you carry sacks of grain to higher ground, lift children onto carts, and steady elders crossing slippery planks. You slip once. Lao catches you. He slips twice. You catch him both. By nightfall, everyone's safe, wet, exhausted, but safe. A woman hands you both a hot drink. It smells like ginger and mercy. "Thank you," she says. "The 2 of you saved us." Lao blushes so hard he nearly evaporates. You sit by the fire that night, warming your feet and your heart. Lao stares into the flames. "You know," he says softly, "I used to think kindness was a luxury, something for people who had time, or money, or nothing to lose." He turns to you. "But it's not, is it? It's a choice. One you make over and over." You smile. "Exactly." On the 7th day, you return to the clearing. Min is waiting, arms crossed. Lao steps forward and hands him a pouch of coins. "This covers the debt, plus extra for the cartwheel you'll never fix." Min weighs the pouch, grunts. Then, without a word, he turns and walks away. Lao watches him go, then turns to you. "I was ready to run, the first day we met, when you found me in the storm. I was ready to steal your food and vanish." You nod. "I didn't," he says. "I know, and now I can't imagine leaving." The wind stirs again. This time, it feels like breath. Waiting for continue. Absolutely. We'll continue from item 7 on the outline. 7. Kindness from a stranger. The thief does something unexpected. He gives you his only blanket, and in that small act, you start to understand grace in a new way. Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are stepping deeper into a quiet, rain-soaked forest, where 2 strangers, a monk and a thief, sit shoulder to shoulder in a cave that hums with the sound of dripping water. You've wandered far from your old life, and even farther from your vows. But tonight, you'll discover something unexpected, something soft, where you'd only expected rough edges. This story might stay with you, like the scent of wet pine or the flicker of firelight in your memory. And it's okay if you don't hear every word. You'll drift, you'll dream, and that's what you're here for. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, Turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. The fire has long since fizzled down to sleepy embers. Outside the cave, rain continues to fall with the quiet persistence of someone trying not to wake a baby. Your robe is still damp, clinging to your skin in a way that's both itchy and oddly grounding. Every few minutes, you shift on the hard stone floor, trying to find a position that doesn't press directly into your spine. The thief notices. He doesn't say anything. He just sighs, leans forward, and begins to unfold something from his bag. It looks like a wool blanket, thin, a little threadbare, probably smells like 7 days of old campfires and at least one questionable river crossing. You watch him, curious. You've already broken your vow, already slept beside a man who admitted to stealing from shrines and eaten food you didn't bless. What more could surprise you? He scoots the blanket towards you without making eye contact. "Here," he mutters, shrugging as if the gesture embarrasses him. "You look like a wet prayer scroll." You chuckle. Just a quiet, chest-deep sound, but it's real. A wet prayer scroll? "I don't know what you monks write on," he says. "Rice paper? Goat skin? Something holy. Whatever it is, it looks better dry." You hesitate. Taking it feels like another line crossed. But you do. You pull the blanket gently over your shoulders. It's still warm from his body, and for a moment, you feel strangely cradled, like a child, like a forgiven sinner. "You'll freeze without it," you say softly. "I've slept colder," he answers, stretching out on the bare rock like he's reclining on a feather mattress. "Besides, you're the one who needs saving, aren't you?" There's no accusation in his tone, just fact. Like he's telling you the moon is out, or that he once stole a wheel of cheese and ate it while running. You watch him lie there, hands behind his head, staring up at the dark ceiling. He's not what you expected. Not cruel, not greedy. He hasn't tried to rob you, hasn't mocked your quiet mutterings. And now he's given you the one thing keeping his bones from turning into ice cubes. "Why are you being kind to me?" you ask. He lets out a long, nasal breath. The monk questions begin. "Seriously? Seriously?" he echoes and then shrugs again. "Because maybe I know what it feels like. To mess something up, big, to not know how to fix it. And because it costs me nothing to be decent for once. Is that monkish enough for you?" A long silence settles between you again. The rain outside intensifies, then slows again. The cave echoes like a soft heartbeat. "I didn't just leave," you say finally. "I ran." He doesn't respond. "I broke a vow. Silence, solitude, service, all of them really. I took a peach from the temple altar. I was hungry. I didn't even pray over it, just bit right in, juice running down my chin like a stupid little boy." The thief hums. "Was it a good peach? Perfect. Then it was worth it." You almost laugh again. "You're the worst spiritual advisor ever." He says, "I've been called worse, mostly by goats. Long story." You wrap the blanket tighter. There's a tear at the corner that someone's tried to mend with a mismatched blue thread. His handiwork, you guess. Not elegant, but honest. And for a moment, the whole world feels like that. Frayed, patched, and weirdly beautiful. "Did you ever try to go back?" you ask him. "To what? Whatever you ran from." He rolls over, facing away from you. "Tried, but the door was locked, and I think they changed the dog." You lie back, listening to the cave breathe. "Still," you say, eyes fluttering shut, "you seem okay. You don't know me. I don't need to." That night, you dream of a temple with no doors, no locks, just an open courtyard where people come and go freely, and no one judges how long they stay. You wake up once, just enough to notice he's shivering, just enough to slide the blanket halfway back toward him before sleep pulls you under again. By morning, the rain has stopped. Light filters through the edge of the cave, delicate as rice paper. The thief is gone. So is the blanket. But tucked where your head rested, you find something small, a single peach pit. You stare at it for a long time. Not everything stolen stays stolen. Waiting for continue. You sit there a while, peach pit rolling back and forth in your palm, like a question you don't yet have the words to ask. The morning sun spills into the mouth of the cave, painting the stone floor gold and warm, like it's blessing the moment without ceremony. It smells like wet moss and something faintly sweet, maybe the last ghost of that peach you dreamed about. The thief is nowhere in sight. No footprints, no note. Just absence, as clean and sudden as the sound of a bell fading into silence. You should feel alone. abandoned. But you don't. Not quite. There's something gentle in his disappearance, like he knew you needed space more than conversation, like he knew he'd already given you the one thing that mattered. You stretch, joints popping like popcorn in a slow, sleepy pan, and step outside the cave. Everything is dripping. The forest looks washed clean, leaves gleaming like polished jade. A soft mist curls around your ankles as you start down the narrow path again, guided by nothing but the sun and the occasional rustle of branches high overhead. After about an hour, you come to a crossroads. Not metaphorically, a literal fork in the path. Two trails. One narrow and well-worn, winding gently uphill toward the east. The other wild and unruly, barely visible beneath the overgrowth, heading down into a tangled mess of trees. You know where the eastern path leads. Back to the monastery. Back to your cell with its cracked window and morning chants. Back to a silence you broke, a robe you don't feel worthy of wearing. The other path, who knows, the thief might have taken it. Or a deer, or no one at all. You squat on your heels, peach pit still in hand, and frown at the mud. The prints are faint, just the barest suggestion of worn sandals leading into the Wilder Trail. Typical, you mutter to yourself. Not even a helpful sign, just vibes. A tiny joke, but it keeps the weight off your chest. You look down both paths, try to feel it out, but your heart doesn't thump for either direction. It just waits, like it's listening. A bird calls, high, mournful, one note. Then silence. You imagine returning to the monastery. Imagine kneeling before the abbot, explaining what you did, confessing over cold tea and stern brows. You picture the younger monks watching from the edge of the hall, their expressions unreadable. You imagine being asked to leave, or worse, being allowed to stay, but never trusted again. Then you imagine walking with the thief. Not forever, just a little longer. Sharing campfires and crumpled stories, hearing him snore like a broken flute. Laughing again, maybe stealing less. Maybe teaching him to pray, not the way the monastery taught you, but in a simpler way, like whispering thanks to the stars or bowing to a well-cooked fish. You toss the peach pit once, catch it again. Then close your eyes and breathe. One breath in, clean, heavy with pine. One breath out, slow, almost a prayer. You step toward the wild path. The trees seem to part slightly as you do, as if saying, all right, let's see where this goes. The trail is difficult. Roots twist like lazy snakes across your steps, and thorny bushes tug at your robe with jealous fingers. But something about it feels right. Honest. The way your thoughts have been lately, scraped, unpolished, but yours. After a while, you spot smoke curling above the treetops. You expect the thief, but what you find is a woman boiling water beside a small wooden cart. She's old, eyes sharp like a hawk's, and when she sees you, she just snorts. You look like a runaway wedding guest. Close, you say. Runaway monk. She squints. Well, that explains the sad face and bad shoes. Sit. You sit. She hands you a cup of bitter tea that tastes like burnt roots and regrets. What are you looking for? She asks. Not sure. Then stop. Looking. I mean, things usually find you once you stop flailing. You nod, sipping. Someone came through here this morning, she says after a pause. Taller than you. Smelled like goat. Paid me with a silver button and told me a monk might come looking stupid. You can't help smiling. That sounds like him. He left you something, she adds, rummaging around in the cart. She pulls out a folded cloth and tosses it into your lap. It's the blanket. Still smells like smoke and river water and something warm. A note is tucked inside the folds. It's not poetic, just 3 words scribbled in smudged ink. Keep walking, monk. That's it. But it's enough. You carry the blanket like a cloak, like a badge, like a joke only 2 people in the world understand. The woman waves you off without asking for payment. And as you keep walking, something inside you begins to settle. Not like a stone dropping. More like a feather finding the floor. The trail eventually evens out. Trees grow thinner. You reach another fork, but this time it doesn't feel like a test. You turn east, not because you're retreating, but because maybe, just maybe, the monk who left the monastery isn't the same one who's going back. You keep walking, and for the first time in a long while, your silence feels chosen, not broken. Waiting for continue. The road back isn't paved with certainty. It's muddy, uneven, and every few steps your sandal sinks just enough to make a soft squelch that sounds vaguely like the universe snickering. The blanket slung over your shoulder swings with each stride, heavy with morning dew and memory. By midday, the trees begin to thin and a familiar shape rises in the distance. The outer stone wall of the monastery, worn with age and weathered by wind. It looks smaller than you remember, less like a fortress, more like an old friend you haven't called in years. You stop on a grassy rise and crouch beside a shallow stream, washing your hands and face. There's a tiny frog perched on a rock beside you, staring like it knows what you've done. You nod to it solemnly. "I took the peach," you say. It doesn't respond, just hops away, probably judging you. Classic frog behavior. You continue down the hill and walk slowly toward the gate. No one's there. The wooden doors are cracked open just enough to slip through, like they were left that way for someone expected, or maybe someone hoped for. Your feet drag slightly, not out of fear, but something heavier. Regret, maybe, or just the weight of choice. Inside, the courtyard is empty except for a broom leaning awkwardly against the prayer bell. There's a single sandal resting on one of the stone benches, as if someone lost it mid-nap. You don't ring the bell. You don't announce yourself. You head for the small garden behind the meditation hall, where the peach trees grow. The tree you took from stands quietly, leaves rustling like a hush. There's a pit-sized gap in the soil below where the fallen fruit once lay. You kneel and slowly, almost reverently, dig a small hole with your fingers. You press the peach pit into the earth. "Sorry," you whisper, patting the soil down gently, and "thank you." When you stand again, someone's behind you. You turn. It's Brother Tendo, the oldest monk here, who once fell asleep in the koi pond during a full moon vigil and blamed ghosts in the water. His eyes meet yours, and something like a smile tugs at the corner of his lips. "You're late for morning meditation," he says. You open your mouth, then close it, then open it again, unsure whether to explain yourself or collapse into an apology-shaped puddle. Instead, you say, "I brought the blanket back." He raises an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware we loaned those to the wilderness." You grin despite yourself. "I had help." He studies you a moment longer. "Come," he says finally, turning toward the hall. "You can explain everything over lentils." You follow him, not to confess, but to share. Later, after chores and chanting and a bowl of soup so salty it could resurrect a fish, you return to your cell. Everything's as you left it. Mat on the floor. Single candle. A worn copy of the sutras that still smells faintly of mildew and sandalwood. But something is different. You feel taller in the space. Not physically, but like your soul's been stretched a little, and now the walls have to work harder to contain you. You sit cross-legged on the mat and unwrap the blanket. Tucked inside, almost invisible in a fold of the fabric, is a small cloth pouch. You open it and find a stone. Smooth. Black. The kind of stone you skip across lakes in summer. Etched into its surface, crudely but clearly, are 3 initials. You smile. You never asked his name. You think back. Try to recall if he ever said it casually, like in the middle of a story about goat theft or questionable cheese. But you come up empty. You whisper the initials once, testing the weight of them on your tongue. Then place the stone on your windowsill, next to the candle. "Thank you," you say. The next few days move slowly. You're not shunned, not punished, but something has shifted. You're asked to teach the younger novices. Something about impermanence or humility or why peaches should be respected. You tell the story not as a lesson, but as a journey. You leave out the thief's name, but not his kindness. You show them the blanket, now washed and stitched at the corner with your own attempt at mending. It's a bad job, worse than his. But it makes the novices laugh. One of them nicknames it the robe of not quite enlightenment. You let it stick. One afternoon, you take a walk past the outer wall, just far enough to see where the wild path splits from the main trail. You stand there for a long time, watching the breeze play with the grass. You half expect to see him again, maybe limping down the path, muttering about bad tea and frogs that owe him money. Maybe with a new story, or a stolen robe, or nothing but that same crooked grin. But the path is empty. You nod anyway. "Keep walking, thief." And you do, because the truth is, he stole something important. And maybe that's exactly what you needed. Waiting for continue. The season begins to shift. The air grows cooler, and the morning mist clings a little longer before lifting. The peach trees in the garden lose their leaves, one by one, like quiet applause winding down after a long performance. Each day, you watch from your cell window, sipping tea, wrapped in the once stolen blanket like it's a second robe. You teach more now. Not always about doctrine, sometimes just about sitting still, listening to wind, watching ants build a bridge out of their own bodies. The young monks adore you in that skeptical way only young people can, curious but unwilling to admit it. One morning, a novice named Rin asks you, "Were you scared when you left?" You don't answer right away. You're trimming a bonsai tree, and you give the tiny pine your full attention. Just one more snip. Then, yes. She leans forward. "Why did you come back?" You think of the thief, the warmth of the blanket, the silence that didn't feel like punishment, the gift of that peach pit nestled in your palm. "I missed something," you say softly. "But I didn't know what it was until I left." "Was it the chanting?" she asks, very seriously. You chuckle. "Not even a little bit." She grins and runs off, barefoot, to share your joke with the others. You return to the tree. There's a crooked branch you're tempted to trim, but you pause. It's oddly beautiful. Bent? Like it grew through windstorms and didn't break. You leave it. A letter arrives 2 weeks later. There's no seal, no return address, just a folded scrap of rice paper tucked into the donations bowl during a pilgrimage. Someone finds it, brings it to you. It smells faintly of goat. You unfold it carefully. Still walking. Traded the button for a fishing hook. Caught nothing. Lost everything. Felt wonderful. Be well, monk. I still have dreams about that peach. You laugh, loudly. It echoes through the courtyard and makes a crow fly off the bell tower in alarm. You keep the note in your robe pocket, right next to a small bundle of blue thread, just in case something tears again. One evening, after chores and prayers and the world has gone to sleep, you sit under the peach tree, the one you returned the pit to. The moonlight is gentle, silvering the earth around you like spilled milk. You close your eyes. Breathe in the scent of stone and wood smoke and damp leaves. You picture him, curled up beside a fire somewhere, a fish not quite cooked through on a stick, talking to himself or the stars or a very opinionated goat. You picture yourself, not as a monk, not as a penitent, just as a person, breathing, listening, still walking. You rest your hand on the soil where the pit is buried. It hasn't sprouted yet, but that's okay. Some things take time, and you're no longer in a hurry, waiting for cool down.